I want to tell you a story. Now, I don't normally do stories on this channel, but this is one about pioneers. This is about women in science. This is a story all about friendship, hard work, overcoming adversity. It's full of action, passion, love, everything you could want. And it's the story of the first ever woman in a UK university. My story starts and ends with one woman, Sophia Jax Blake. Now let me paint you a little bit of a picture about what Sophia was like. Sophia was an iron-willed, strong, independent, feminist woman living in the 1800s, way before her time. She was an unmarried, gay woman living with her partner, and she had a fight to fight in the world. After travelling and helping in many hospitals in different places in the world, she realised that women were not getting the type of treatment that they needed from doctors because women couldn't be doctors. So she decided to go and get a medical degree. Now, at the time, the Scottish Enlightenment was quite different to the English one, and so Scottish universities were much more likely to accommodate women in the university than English ones. So Sophia moved up to Edinburgh to apply for a medicine degree at Edinburgh University. And what was she told? Well, in theory we would have you on, but we're not going to make lots of accommodations just for one woman. So get to, basically. But Sophia didn't stop there. She wrote to the Scotsman and to other national newspapers crying out for women who wanted to study medicine alongside her. So 4 women joined her in the fight, moved up to Edinburgh, moved in together and started studying for the matriculation exam. So these 5 women were Sophia, Isabel, Edith, Matilda and Helen. Edith was hesitant to join because she doubted her own abilities. She reportedly wrote Sophia a letter, part of which said, "Do you think anything more is requisite to ensure success than moderate abilities and a good share of perseverance? I believe I may lay claim to these, together with a real love of the subjects of study. But as regards to any thorough knowledge of these subjects at present, I fear I am deficient in most." Nonetheless, strong-willed Sophia convinced Edith to join, even tutoring her in maths before the matriculation exam. And so they studied and worked and sat the exam in October 1869. 4 of these 5 women came in the top 7 places, earning them an honoured place on the matriculation roll. And thus they were accepted as the first ever female undergraduate students in all of Britain. Sophia wrote to her friend, "It is a grand thing to enter the very first British university ever open to women, isn't it?"
Now this is number 15 Buccleuch Place. This is where the women actually stayed when they were studying at Edinburgh University.
Many of the course tutors and national papers were in full support of the women entering into university. The women were tutored in separate classes, which meant that they had higher fees to be there, but for all intents and purposes, in all other respects, they were treated equal to the men. And so the women studied quite happily in their little flat in Buccleuch Place for the whole first year of their degree. And then came their end of year exams. Now, remember Edith, who was full of self-doubt and lack of confidence before signing up for the degree? Well, through hard work and a bit of tutoring, she came first in their entire class of over 200 students. This entitled her to the prestigious Hope Scholarship for second year. All of the other women passed, and in fact 4 of the 5 of them earned honours in all their subjects. Now, it was at this time, when women were actually starting to do better than men, that opponents to women in education started to get louder. Their main, or at least most influential opponent, was a senior professor at the Edinburgh University, Professor Robert Kristensen. Now, he firmly held the belief that women by nature were meant to be mothers and housekeepers, and so lacked the intellectual stamina and ability that men did. He thought that if women studied alongside men at university, that would lower standards. And it was through his influence that many of the staff at Edinburgh University, who were initially supportive of women in education, started to oppose even teaching them. And in fact, the Hope Scholarship that Edith was entitled to was not awarded to her, under the pretense that it's always been awarded to men in the past, and so therefore it's a men's award. Also, many of the students were also grumbling about women in education and started holding protests. Many of them would vandalise the women's house.
This is also the door that rioters attached Catherine wheels to and threw mud at when women came out.
Some of the students would hurl abuse or intimidate the women as they were walking to classes. This caused some of the more supportive students to actually act as bodyguards for the women and escort them from the door to their classes. By this time, the number of female undergraduates at Edinburgh University had risen to 7, but also the opposition had risen to breaking point. So then came the Surgeons' Hall riots. This happened before an anatomy exam in the women's second year. When the women arrived onto Nicholson Street to take the exam, they found their way blocked by more than 200 angry protesters outside Surgeons' Hall. The entrance gates were slammed shut in their face. They had to endure minutes, if not hours, of the hostile crowd until a more sympathetic student eventually opened the gates to them. The aftermath of this, unfortunately, changed education for women for a long time. The legal courts were very much in favour of the women, and in fact, many of the rioters were fined for, public nuisance or whatever the laws were back then. And many national newspapers and figures also rose in support of the women, including Charles Darwin. Unfortunately, the university actually revoked the women's rights to graduate and to their degrees. In fact, women were not admitted again into Edinburgh University for a further 22 years. Not until 1892, after the Legal Universities Scotland Act made all classes co-educational. So what about the Edinburgh 7? What happened to them? Well, their leader, Sophia, moved to London and started campaigning there, eventually opening the London School of Medicine. 6 of the original 7 actually attended this school. One of the 7, Isabel, was more diplomatic, shall we say, than Sophia was, and actually gave up her dreams to become a practicing doctor to help run the school. 5 of the 7, including Sophia and Edith, were eventually granted MDs. These were in foreign universities in Paris and Bern. Edith set up a practice in Mumbai and eventually moved back to Leeds. Others of the 7 set up practices in Tokyo and in London. And Sophia, who started it all, moved back to Edinburgh. She was the first ever female doctor of the city and set up practice in Bruntsfield, which soon became the Bruntsfield Medical Hospital, which ran for generations. And she continued to campaign for women in education until the end of her life. So all this happened, 150 years ago, and does it even affect me now? Why bother telling this story? Well, first of all, it's an amazing story, like Hollywood going to do something about this. And secondly, it's a really important story about women in science. I'm filming this early in the morning. I'm about to go to a scientific job after getting a degree in physics and in engineering. And if it wasn't for pioneers like Sophia and others, then I might not have been able to get a degree. And then lastly, it paints a story that all of us can relate to, especially women and girls. Sometimes we're held back by other people's expectations. Sometimes, and more often than not, we're held back by our own insecurities or lack of belief in our own abilities. The story of the Edinburgh 7 says it's okay to fight for yourself. It's important to work hard, to help others, to persevere. And most of all, if and when we fail, it's really important to keep trying and then fail again and then try again. Because you, yes you, can do anything that you set your mind to. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Science with Steph. This project has been in the making for months and I put quite a lot of work into it. And so if you did like it, please give it a thumbs up and share it with anyone that you think would find it interesting. I want to say also a thank you to the We Create Edu community that gave me the idea for making a video about FIRST, which is part of the Spring collab. If you want to watch some of the other videos in this creation, you can watch the playlist, which is on the card. And in the meantime, if you want to watch any more of my videos, then you can watch my last video by clicking here, or you can watch the video that the YouTube algorithm thinks that you enjoy best by clicking here. Alright, thanks for watching and I'll see you next week. Bye! You heard it here first.